Kyiv streets are like in
Kyiv streets are like in Kiev. Klopetenko's restaurants, P.1 or Kanapa, where you can go and try Ukrainian cuisine, but with some modern touch.
What are your favorite ones? Is there something that comes to your mind when you are thinking about Ukrainian brands?
I went to misinformation Christmas market and got very nice leather gloves from Khmelnytsky.
Oh my God.
NATO is supporting Ukraine strongly and is supporting both politically and practically.
Hello world, it's Kyiv, not Kyiv on the line. My name is Polina Bachuk and this is my friend and fellow Tatiana Haiduk.
Today we enjoy the company of Ms Vineta Kleine, Director of NATO Information and Documentation Center in Ukraine. What a pleasure to see you in Kyiv, not Kyiv.
Likewise.
Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and I think that traditionally we will start with a block of personal questions.
I would like it to be in kind of a game, a guessing game, I don't know. I believe that you have an impressive traveling experience. Let's try to compare Kyiv, where we know, with some other cities you've ever visited. So, quick question, quick answer. I would like to ask you something kind of Kyiv streets are like in where, and short explanation, why do you think so? What about that?
Let's go ahead.
Okay, so Kyiv streets are like in...
Kyiv streets are like in Kiev.
Great answer.
Why? I do love Andriysky Uzviz. I do love Mariinsky Park. I do love streets around Lipsky neighborhood. And I do love Kabul streets.
I think that Kyiv streets cannot be compared with anything else, so that is the answer. Another question. Kyiv restaurants are like in?
Kyiv restaurants are like, I would again say like in Kiev, because each city has its own peculiarity or character. And Kyiv restaurants are famous for indeed good cuisine. And that you can find all kinds of cuisine, Italian, Georgian, Oriental, French. And of course, on top of that, you can find, for example, Klopetenko's restaurants, P.1 or Kanapa, where you can go and try Ukrainian cuisine, but with some modern touch.
Nice. Kyiv shops are like in...
Kyiv shops are like in Europe, one thing, but on top of that, Kyiv shops are like in Ukraine. And what I like P.1 market, because, and again, I'll say that in Kyiv you can get all kinds of Ukrainian brands, which I do love and which you can't get abroad. That's why I prefer to do shopping. But when I want to find something Ukrainian branded, I go to Kyiv shops or P.1, which is my most favorite one, and there I can get Ukrainian brands.
What about Kyiv city entertainment, except for Christmas markets?
Great music halls. Great cinema halls, great, for example, jazz concerts, and big halls, and where if I want to indulge myself in good quality cultural event, I just need to go to Concert UA website or Marco website, and I can get everything.
Great. What about Kyiv architecture? Does it resemble you with something?
It resembles a bit of Paris. And I especially love colored brick buildings, those early 20th century or late 19th century, because it's something that is very unique, especially for Kyiv.
Kyiv metro is like where?
Kyiv metro is comfortable, and it's very easy and logically built. And it functions very well, flawlessly. And I would, if I compare to some other cities or towns, I would say that it's on top of what I can compare to others.
That's the first time I hear
That's
such
comparison.
a
I agree with that because I've been in metro in a couple of other cities, and I have to say that Kyiv one is really great.
I agree.
Warm.
And what about the Kyivans? What about the people of the city?
If I have to compare with other big cities or capitals, I would say that Kyivans are a bit, compared to people who live in other capitals, they are a bit more laid back in positive meaning. They are less stressed out, and they do enjoy a day, every single day. And that is what I like, to go to coffee shops or restaurants and observe people. I love their interaction, and when they meet somebody, they hug each other. So
even despite coronavirus.
So I think it's difficult for us to restrain from hugging or handshakes. So, but I do love the feeling in coffee shops.
That's very nice to hear, and I really enjoy this day as well, almost as a Kyivan. But I invite us to slightly move from the personal block of questions to the most interesting part, probably to the political one. And the first question is more serious than the first part. It's about the fact that Ukraine and our Western allies are now sounding alarm over the significant concentration of the Russian troops near the Ukrainian border. And both politicians and media say different and various scenarios, from the full-scale invasion to bluffing. So whom to believe and what to expect for?
What we all see is a significant Russian buildup in around Ukraine, and also a significant concentration of Russian troops on the border with Ukraine. And of course, it's of concern of all of us. And for example, 2 weeks ago in Riga, during meeting of NATO foreign ministers, it was also raised again, this issue, and then it was also clearly stated that NATO stands by Ukraine, and that any future Russian aggression towards Ukraine would come at a high cost, and will cause significant economic and political consequences. Of course, we don't know what are the real intentions behind the buildup of Russian troops. However, NATO is supporting Ukraine strongly and is supporting both politically and practically. And again, a couple of weeks ago, NATO foreign ministers reinstated that we stand by Ukraine, and that Russia should de-escalate and should be transparent.
Thank you for the support. I think that Ukraine needs it, especially these times.
Ukraine is also in the forefront of the fight against misinformation, which is kind of a part of a hybrid warfare we're facing now. The world is flooded with fakes, with conspiracy theories, and under such conditions, the fight against misinformation becomes a part of national security strategies. Does NATO happen to have kind of set of rules and recommendations how to tackle information threats as a part of a hybrid warfare?
Thank you for the question, and it's very important. And if we talk about disinformation, fake news, I like to compare with the wooden horse of the Greeks, ancient Greeks, who sent to the city of Troy. And at that time we used false witnesses and faked plans, and nowadays we use made up or fake social media accounts and disinformation and malicious information attacks. Indeed, it's a threat. We all are exposed, It's a threat that we need to address quickly. We need to be proactive, and here it's very important how active we are, how proactive we are. And it's also a whole of society task or duty to address disinformation, because everyone has a role to play, be it media, academia, government, civil society. And NATO has its own approach, and it's a dual-track approach when it comes to disinformation. First, we track, monitor and assess information environment, because it's important for NATO mission and understand what is information environment where NATO operates. And the other thing is that we embed these insights into our communications efforts. And what I have already underlined previously, NATO use fact-based and proactive and transparent approach when it comes to informing its audiences, informing about NATO's missions, NATO's tasks, and we do it in a measured way, because debunking or addressing every piece of disinformation can just be counterproductive. That's why we need to see what tools we should use, and do we really need to address that certain piece of disinformation, and how we do it. But what I want to underline once again is that it's a complex set of things. For example, we need to increase our society's also digital and media literacy. There should be also legal procedures in place. It's also that we involve civil society and fact checkers. It's also about increasing resilient societies' resilience. It's also about teaching, educating, and explaining, and being proactive.
In Ukraine, there are two centers that are quite similar, that are used to combat misinformation. The first one is the Center for Strategic Communications and Information Security at the Ministry of Culture of Ukraine, and the second one is the Center for Countering Disinformation that reports directly to the National Security and Defense Council. The founders of both of the centers say that they have used the best experience and best practices of the NATO and the EU. So did you already happen to cooperate with both of the centers, or with one of the centers, and in what projects, to be precise?
Because Ukraine is at the forefront of disinformation, you have accumulated great expertise and solid knowledge when it comes to facing disinformation. And your experience and accumulated expertise has been transformed into the establishment of both centers, Center for Countering Disinformation and Center for Strategic Communications and Information Security. And both centers are doing great work, and they are faced now with important task to this accumulated knowledge and information to use, and also to use for the benefit of the state and of Ukraine. And for example, just recently, last week, we organized a joint event, Kyiv Strategic Communications Stratcom Forum. We're together with the Center for Strategic Communications and Information Security, and that was a great event because it gave it was a platform for both national Ukrainian experts and foreign experts to share information. It was like a platform, so when we came together and discussed and debated and exchanged information on how to tackle disinformation, on how to deal with fake news, on how to respond to propaganda. And I think this cumulative knowledge is important, and both centers, I wish them indeed the best endeavors, and whatever their endeavors are, that they use and maximize their input, and that they, for example, share their knowledge also with NATO and European partners, because coordination of information and cooperation is one of the aspects NATO actively uses when it comes to disinformation.
Recent researches showed that only about 11% of Ukrainians could distinguish fake from the truth. Does NATO Information Documentation Center has any recommendations of how to ramp up one's ability to recognize fakes?
One of the things what we can do all together is check our source of information and use reliable source of information. And yes, indeed, NATO Information Documentation Center also puts its efforts in increasing awareness of Ukrainians about NATO, NATO's values, agenda, NATO-Ukraine cooperation. And that's why we have our Facebook page, Instagram and Twitter.
We are very active, by the way.
Thank you.
We are the subscribers.
Compliments to all the team.
Thank you. Which indeed we use actively, and we try to cover or show all aspects of our work and engagement and our efforts of NATO representation in Ukraine. This is one thing. Another thing is what, for example, we do as a center. We have helped to financially support media literacy trainings for both for media representatives, for journalists, and also for civil servants. This is one of the things. And then another thing is our signed NATO-Ukraine Strategic Communications Partnership Roadmap, which we signed in 2015. And within the partnership roadmap, we promote trainings or also like engagements, various or also participation of Ukrainian experts in various STRATCOM-related events and forums and conferences, not only in Ukraine but also, for example, in NATO member states. And this exposure to STRATCOM, various STRATCOM forums, it's very needed because it's about exchange of information and exchange of accumulated experience and expertise. Then we also actively work with the youth. For example, this year we run about I was meeting virtually with students across the country. And I think I had some 40 lectures during the winter and spring months, and where I was telling about what is NATO, about NATO's 2030 initiative, about NATO's role in the modern world. And of course, it's always about answering to students' questions, and I just love students' questions because that is also how you can engage and then you can see what is of their interest, what topics they are interested in too.
And students' questions are always very honest because, you know, they don't have to be diplomatic asking you about this or that. They are asking what's on their mind, that's on the top of their tongues, you know.
They're straightforward questions.
Yeah.
And you need to think also, to give the answer they are looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also very direct and honest one, I think.
Yeah, you can't fake. Indeed, you have to be honest and open.
Tell us a little bit more how the NATO Information and Documentation Center work to disseminate information about NATO, its mission.
Learning process is much more enjoyable when we do it in creative way and when we are just open and do it by fun. Both Ukraine and Georgia will join NATO, and we stand by this decision. Here in Ukraine, we will host a NATO Parliamentary Assembly session, which is a huge event.
Can't wait.